Hello and welcome to the Fundamental Value podcast, hosted by Joshua Frank, co-founder and CEO of the TIE. On Fundamental Value, we speak with leading analysts, traditional finance and digital asset firms, and investigate how leading minds in the cryptocurrency space research, analyze, and quantify the value of digital assets. Quick disclaimer, this podcast was recorded and is being made available solely for informational purposes.
Today, I'm excited to be joined by Guy Hirsch, Managing Director for North America at Kraken. Guy, it's great to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
So let's get right into it. So a question that we always like to ask people is, can you talk about your background pre-crypto and kind of how you found yourself falling down the rabbit hole and ending up in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, around the time that that Satoshi published the white paper, I was living in San Francisco. This is where most of the cypherpunks apparently were kind of living, and so I started to hear about Bitcoin very early on, just by kind of hanging out in all sorts of startup accelerators, things of that nature. Then I think in 2011, I had dinner with Vinny, the founder of Civic. And this is where like my first kind of multi-hour long discussion about Bitcoin and crypto, and he urged me to buy at least $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. Then sadly I didn't do that. I did download the wallet. I did kind of try, but nothing. Definitely not $10,000. Continued to learn more about this. Started to buy some Bitcoin, understanding the kind of the philosophical and ideological bend to what Bitcoin was all about, and it started to really resonate with me. And then in 2014, 2015, I was at Samsung leading innovation strategy. And we've built, one of the things that I was tasked with is to create differentiating experiences from Apple retail, like versus Apple retail. So I designed a point of sale system. And one of the things we introduced in that point of sale system is the ability to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. So this was the first time I actually tried to commercialize something that had to do with crypto. It didn't really see the light of day, but really I worked hard on kind of making it happen. And how Bitcoin would work and why is it beneficial for people to, like, say, visit in New York and don't have to then convert to let's say yen to dollars, but they can pay with with a native digital currency. And then when I left Samsung, Yoni Asia, the founder and CEO of eToro, offered me to lead eToro US, and that was a pure crypto play initially. And I jumped on the opportunity. I thought it was kind of a great opportunity to build a crypto brand in the US. And yeah, I did that for 5 years. And now I'm with Kraken.
So what was that like? So I remember we met in March 2018 for the first time. I was the only person at the TIE. I believe you were the only person at eToro US. So in a way, you were kind of operating a startup within a already, obviously a startup organization, but a much larger startup organization. So what was that, what was that experience like? And in that time, right, the US retail market evolved quite significantly, right? What kind of changes did you see in the market as the firm itself was growing?
Yeah. So when we met, it was like when we entered crypto winter. December 2017 was, I would say, the wave of speculator getting into crypto. Before that, I think it was mostly people who were motivated by ideology, were motivated by kind of the freedom to transact and things of that nature. And then 2017, we really saw like a wave of speculators, like retail customers, kind of coming in and wanting to make like a quick buck. And then when it all died down, it was like we saw who's in it for the long run. And luckily, both you and I were in it for the long haul.
Well, luckily or unluckily, depending on how you view it. But
yeah. But I thought that it was a great time to actually build a brand and build a crypto business, because you had to come up with a better explanation as to why to allocate to this asset class, why this matters, rather than, oh, look, it went from 3,000 to 19,000, right? That's we just had to do a lot more work. And as it relates to building that from scratch in the US, it was a great experience. It was a startup within a big company. eToro was successful at the time outside of the US. And it was really exciting for me to kind of build that from the ground up and do it in a very kind of methodological way, meaning pursuing the MTLs, understanding what's our brand story, what will be our product features, and what really would drive people to buy, to allocate to crypto. And the key message was diversification, right? So if you have a portfolio of equities, of real estate or whatnot, you should really allocate to crypto to some extent, right? Each investor has their own kind of preferences, but it makes your portfolio overall better, even if it's like 0.5% of your portfolio.
And so, presumably over the 4 or 5 years that you spent at eToro, you had many opportunities to jump to different crypto companies, right? I'm sure people came calling. And so why Kraken? Why did you decide to make the move to Kraken specifically?
Right. So first, I want to be clear. eToro is a great company. I have nothing but great things to say about eToro and about Yoni. Just a great success story. But I think what Kraken represents is, for me, is a much better alignment in terms of values. Kraken is really big on its mission and culture to accelerate the adoption of cryptocurrency kind of worldwide. And that really drives a lot of things at Kraken that, to me, feel like I'm at home, meaning we care about freedom. We care about enabling people to unlock the opportunities that they have using crypto. It's really another way of saying we try to accelerate the adoption of freedom, of liberty around the world, and that kind of manifests itself in many ways and makes me feel like I'm really at a place that aligns with my values. And people can see what Jesse Powell has been writing from the get-go on, like, what he believes in and so on and so forth, and it just really resonates with me, and I'm just happy to be with a company like that.
And so I think you spoke actually a little bit about the differentiation of Kraken, right? Which I think is the culture. And I think people within crypto recognize that, right? The focus on security, on privacy, and on, kind of adopting that crypto ethos. But from a retail or institutional perspective, how do you go about differentiating an exchange, right? How do you build a different end experience for the user, right? And how do you develop a moat? Because one of the things that we've seen within crypto is, it's clear that I guess Binance has built a moat as the largest exchange within crypto over the last few years. But there have been a lot of crypto exchanges. I mean, keep in mind, Binance only launched about 5 years ago, right? We're not talking 20 or 30 years. And before Binance, there were other exchanges. There was Mt. Gox. Bitstamp had its time in the spotlight for a while, right? And so no one has really figured out how to build a long-term competitive moat and establish itself as the dominant player, and certainly not in the U.S. retail market. So how do you kind of think about that and go about doing that?
I think there are a number of challenges that Kraken is executing on quite well when it comes to the industry we're in. One you mentioned is security. Security at Kraken is taken at a whole new level that I've never experienced, in terms of how one of our values is to be kind of productively paranoid. We need to make sure that Kraken never gets hacked. I mean, I know it's very, very difficult, right? But the security measures we have, the security training we get, the type of kind of the culture of being very, very paranoid to emails. It's a virtual fortress. So this is one thing that's really, really important. And as the market kind of sees kind of what's going on with other companies, I think this really makes Kraken stand out. That's one thing. The second is customer service and customer care. I think when you have money in an institution, you expect to be able to talk to someone and talk to someone fast if you need it. That is something that I think makes us really, really unique and really different. It goes along on the same path of trust. We have security, yes, but we need to be there for our customers. And that is something that I think is critical. Also in relation to your experience with other financial institutions that aren't in crypto, like banking or credit card companies or so on and so forth. We just want to be better than all of them. And I think our customers can notice that. And then the third pillar is playing by the rules. I mean, it's very hard to scale a company globally in a compliant way to pursue all these licenses.
Especially when you don't even know what compliance means because you don't get clarity.
Correct. But but it's very big moat to pursue licenses in multiple jurisdictions, and not just to pursue the licenses, but maintain the licenses, adhere to the policies and procedures, work with regulators as regulations are getting updated, work with partners like banks that need your policies and procedures and compliance policy to be updated as well. That on a global scale, very, very difficult. So you can open an exchange and run it globally without registering anywhere. But that is not a solid foundation to grow, especially if you have fiat on ramps, if you have all these kind of bridges to the old world.
Sounds a little bit like, do you remember the SEC coming out against Bits Lotto or whatever that exchange was a couple weeks ago, whenever that was?
Yeah.
And so, you spoke to a lot of them, right? Which are the biggest challenges associated with operating a trading venue in crypto. And so obviously a huge one is regulatory compliance and banking, which are two things you alluded to. But what are some of the other challenges that you guys are faced with? Or, feel free to add to what I just said.
Yeah, I think compliance and regulations is a big one, right? It's a big one, especially on a global scale. That is, at the end of the day, Kraken's in the business of trading, investing, building your wealth, things of that nature. But if you look at banks, if you look at financial institutions, they're really a pretty robust compliance machines. They have a lot of people, a lot of software, a lot of resources being dedicated to comply with rules and regulations in a way that scales, in a way that doesn't break the business. I think that is one giant, kind of challenge to operate the way that we and other financial institutions operate. And actually, I think there's an opportunity in the market for some sort of a way to digest all these rules and regulations and kind of spit out some sort of either prescribed compliance policies or actual code that makes sure that you're compliant in all the jurisdictions that you're where you kind of operate in. That is a very big hurdle. The other big hurdle is working with partners. Right.
And so in that regard, do you have to have local legal partners on the ground in most of these different jurisdictions, like law firms? Like if you're doing business in the UK, do you need to have a UK specific law firm? Or, if you're doing business in Singapore, I mean, do you have to have, like, how do you actually achieve compliance within all those, not just compliance, but ongoing compliance in all those different jurisdictions?
Yeah, so jurisdictions differ from one another in terms of the requirements. Some do require that you're going to have boots on the ground. meaning people in their actual jurisdictions operate in the business. Some don't. And in some cases where it's an important market, like the UK or Europe, or wherever you operate, where you have like a significant presence or a lot of customers, you probably want to have local law firm that are very familiar with what's going on and very familiar with the subject matter and can advise in a way that that is kind of trustworthy and can actually be the business can count on in making decisions. There's also a lot of merit to do policy and talk to the regulators, talk to stakeholders, engage them. We have a great kind of policy team at Kraken that are doing a phenomenal job on a global scale, because we want to, be educators. We want to be, we want to help regulators. We want to make sure that they get everything they need in order to adapt to this rapidly evolving industry and be an enabler to innovation and not a blocker.
And so I know I cut you off there talking about challenges. So is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think partners. So when you look at the ecosystem of building a financial institution or building kind of fintech, you really need partners. You need banks. You need credit card companies. You need insurance companies. You need all sorts of things in order to grow. And crypto is still perceived to be a high risk vertical, a high risk industry. So that means that a lot of these partners won't work with you. Doesn't matter how big you are; they just won't onboard a crypto company. And if they are, they have either a very limited offering or they have a very expensive offering. And that is something that you need to kind of deal with as you are trying to scale the business. So, banking is an obvious one. Well, actually take insurance, right? The insurance world still doesn't understand crypto and how to provide coverage for, let's say, theft or loss of keys or things of that nature. It's really difficult for them to assess the risk and distribute the risk in a way that would make it profitable for them. And therefore, the offering when it comes to insurance is very, very limited. And in cases where you have them, it's very expensive. So I think that's another kind of key challenge.
I think that's a really good point that people don't bring up. Even like for a company like ours, that is we're a data company. We're not touching underlying crypto at all. Even getting something like D&O, like directors and officers insurance, because we're a crypto company, is difficult, even though, at the end of the day, we're not even touching tokens. We're selling information, right? So I think that's a really fair point. And so what about, we talked a little bit globally, and obviously eToro's a global company, but you are the managing director of North America after all. And so naturally I have to go to the US. And so what are like US centric challenges that not just that you've been facing now, but you've been, you ran eToro US. I mean, I remember in 2018, we were talking about eToro getting a bit license. eToro just announced that they got a bit license this year. And you're not even there anymore for perspective on how long and dragged out. Maybe they got it a little bit ago and they waited to announce it. But the point is that it's an incredibly dragged out process, right? And so, how have you kind of seen, or seen the regulatory environment in the US evolve and change over the last 5 years? And what are kind of some US specific challenges that you're facing nowadays, especially in light of, the collapse of SEB and others?
Yeah. So the US is, when you operate a crypto business, when you operate, financial services company, fintech, you might be in a situation where there is not a lot of clarity in terms of who is actually regulating you. And in case there is clarity, you're still subject to federal regulators. You are subject to state regulators. And there's another set of people who are regulating you, which are like the state attorney generals, or I would say kind of more of a catch-all type regulator that just are out there to try to protect consumers from like fraud and abuse and things of that nature. And so if you tally all of them, especially in the case of crypto, you might be facing north of like 70 agencies that may have jurisdiction over your business. Starting from the SEC, FINRA, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, FTC in certain cases, obviously all the states' financial services departments, state AGs, and so on and so forth. So it's really complex. It's really complex, and you need to build your compliance policies in your infrastructure in a way that understands this complexity. Secondly, as you mentioned, for example, on the bit license, sometimes you want to play by the rules, but it's a multi-year process to get something through the finish line. I mean, New York DFS, even though now it's a whole lot better, for like, I think 2 years, didn't issue a bit license to anyone. They just didn't issue any bit license. So if you wanna operate in New York, during those days, you just the regulator wasn't just issuing the licenses. So now it's a bit better, but still. What I do see right now, I mean, the dynamic is really interesting because, as we all know, the industry is asking Congress to really clarify the rules of the road and get pass legislation, not just one, but various bills in order to have clear rules of the road and framework for the industry. But states are not like waiting, and you see a lot of really interesting legislations bubbling up in state houses. So you have Utah passing a law pertaining to a DAO. So that's really cool. I haven't kind of delved into the details, but obviously the legislator is thinking about these things and pass legislation dealing with a DAO. New Jersey is contemplating a bill that would make it similar to the New York bit license. In Texas, there's a bill where the legislator is contemplating some sort of a framework for proof of reserve and things of that nature. So all these things are happening, tagged along with the fact that Congress needs to really clarify the rules of the road, and that makes for a really interesting dynamic in terms of like the regulatory landscape in the U.S. and it's really complex.
Yeah, and I mean, my next question was, to what degree are regulators coordinated? And based off what you're saying, it sounds like not so much. But I do wonder. I mean, we saw the the collapse of SVB and I think it was Silvergate originally, and then the NYAG comes and shuts down Signature Bank, right? And it feels like a lot of crypto regulation is piling on at the same time. And there's a lot of thoughts, or comments going around that like the regulators are out to kill crypto, but the regulators aren't one person. Regulator is a group of collectively a large number of people, right? There are 100 senators in the U.S., right? There's there's the SEC, there's the CFTC, there's the NYAG, and all these different regulatory bodies. Do you think they're speaking to each other a lot? Do you think they're coordinated in their efforts, or do you think these are just different actors kind of acting on their own behalf?
That's a great question. I think that these regulators, some of them have budgets in the billions, are very complex systems with a lot of political drivers that drive their action, and I think it is difficult for them to coordinate. So I think sometimes, I mean, depends on leadership at a specific a specific agency. You would find a leader that wants to do that. You would find a leader that wants to coordinate. But oftentimes, I think these are not coordinated plans, and you can even hear in kind of public statements that some leaders saying that ETH is security, and others saying that it isn't. So even that, in terms of public statements and kind of clarity to the market, you can see that there's like lack of coordination among the states. Sometimes there's a better a better coordination through like reciprocity agreements, or when they do multi-state audits and things of that nature. So sometimes there's a better coordination between the states, but by and large, it's not a well-coordinated network of regulators working in unison and providing clarity to the market.
And so there is a lot of uncertainty in crypto right now, right? And somehow, despite that, we've emerged and we're currently sitting at $27,500 Bitcoin. We were at, as high as 28,000. This is being recorded, probably a week or so before anybody listens. So if you see the price is different, that's our apologies. But my question isn't where is Bitcoin's price going to go? My question is, how do you take advantage of all of that uncertainty and emerge in an even better position? What are kind of the biggest opportunities that you see in this space, and where is Kraken focused?
I think there's now a free alpha when it comes to crypto banking. I mean, the law, to my understanding, doesn't prohibit a bank from banking, crypto firms. So with everything that happened with SVB and Signature and Silvergate, I think that there's now an opportunity there's a free alpha in the market for banks who are willing to take some risk and onboard, some crypto companies and have some exposure into the space. Obviously, it comes with higher fees, and it's going to be like more expensive for the crypto firms to operate in that bank. But I just think there's like free alpha out there for banking institutions to figure out what's the best way to onboard and bank crypto companies and take all these kind of all basically this market and bank this market and make a lot of money. So I think that is a giant opportunity right now in the space on the heels of SVB, Signature, and Silvergate. I also feel that, as we talked before, I think there's a giant opportunity in RegTech. If you build compliance systems, compliance SaaS, you have a lot of opportunity to capture a lot of upside in all these companies trying to make sure that they're on the up and up and they are ready to be audited, and they can quickly demonstrate to a regulator or other stakeholders that their shop is running in a compliant way. I think there's so much opportunity in RegTech. It's hard, right? Because these are kind of B2B and maybe long sales cycles, but I just feel it's going to be very lucrative, in particular when institutions, more traditional institutions, trying to get into the space like Fidelity and BlackRock and things of that nature, and then you sell to these institutions a suite of services that allows them to be compliant in this space too, and not just in TradFi.
And what about for Kraken specifically, though? Like, as an exchange, you guys are compliant in a large number of jurisdictions, right? You guys are, have kind of a reputation of being secure and private, right? And so naturally, I think, especially in the void that's been created with FTX now going under, there's obviously concerns with other exchanges, and I'm not going to speak to anybody specifically in that regard, right? But there's concerns that other exchanges lost user deposits through different, various means. And so naturally, there's kind of this opportunity for Kraken, right? And I mean, I view that in particular, and this is just my opinion, but from an institutional adoption perspective, right? Institutions, to get comfortable with crypto, need to have multiple different venues that they can actually execute and trade on, right? And so I think naturally, Kraken probably finds itself in a pretty good position. And so how do you kind of go about taking advantage of that? And what do you think the products and services that you need to build are?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we need to look at the market and see where the next kind of influx, where's the next bull run is going to come from. And I agree with you. It's going to come from institutions. It's going to come from, the BlackRocks and the Fidelities and other kind of big institutions and eventually pension funds, right? And the large investors kind of allocating to crypto, maybe initially just Bitcoin, but later on maybe to kind of additional
Well, I mean, many of these guys are already allocating significantly, but into funds, right? So that's how most of the crypto funds are getting their money, right? Or a large percentage of them is from these institutional allocators. I mean, there's still people don't realize this. I mean, tens of billions in dry powder sitting within crypto funds waiting to be deployed, right? So
Yeah, but I at the end of the day, when you look at when you look at the world's kind of asset classes, when you see where the money is,
yep.
right? So there's a ton in cash, a ton in bonds, equities, real estate, all of that. And in each, you can say, hey, this can be at the very least tokenized, right? And when it is tokenized, when real estate is tokenized, when the bond market is tokenized, and there are already kind of companies doing that, then you need to provide them with services that fit this way of doing business. You need to provide them with, a qualified custody solution to custody all these tokens that represent maybe real estate or represent bonds or represent equities. You need to provide them with settlement. You need to provide them with a way to kind of audit this thing. You need to provide them with security services. So all these things are areas that Kraken can play a role in. And I'm not saying we are planning on all of these, but Kraken is a crypto native company. We were founded to be a crypto company, and so we get this space really, really well. We have institutional customers, we have retail customers, we have what we call pro, meaning people who are doing this on a more than a casual basis and really kind of know how to kind of trade. But by and large, we have the DNA to be able to extend some of these services in a way that would really scale our business. I would add one more kind of focus area specifically in the US, which are registered investment advisors. When you and I met, I was speaking about this in 2018 and
you've been talking about this for longer than anybody in crypto, so I give you full credit.
So I think that this is going to be where we're going to see the next wave. Like once registered investment advisors have the clarity and the comfort that they can allocate to crypto, some of them already do, right? Some of them are kind of early adopters. They already do that. There's even some RIAs that are dedicated only to crypto. But when you look at the market, this is where most of the assets are located at registered investment advisors. This is where Americans kind of manage their money. And even if you look at millennials, they're still joining in droves to be customers of registered investment advisors. And when you have this kind of vast market of people who aren't ready to press buy Bitcoin by themselves, but would trust their advisor to do it, this is where you see the next wave and the next kind of influx of money kind of coming in. So I believe this is coming very soon, meaning in the next 2-3 years, you're going to see more and more adoption in the RIA space and more allocation to crypto from within customers' portfolios. But when we say crypto, I also want to mention NFTs. So fast forward 5 years, a customer at an RIA would have the opportunity to allocate to equities, to bonds, to things of that nature. But they also have allocation to Bitcoin, ETH, maybe a couple other more, but also to maybe digital art or maybe some sort of other IP that can be bought digitally and have better diversification and better kind of risk return on their portfolio.
That's a hot take. I think that's an underratedly hot take that you think RIAs are going to be offering NFTs, but we'll come back and we'll circle back on this a few years from now and see. I agree with you on the Bitcoin, ETH, and crypto allocation perspective. The NFT one, though, look, you've been right on a lot of things over the years, so let's we'll come circle back on that one. But I speaking of RIAs, that's very much a US centric thing. And so as we think about the geographic distribution of interest in crypto, can you speak to that a little bit in terms of where you think, obviously your focus is primarily on North America, but where do you think the interest in crypto is globally right now? Like one of the things that I've been finding interesting, and this is just the last month, so keep that in mind, it's just a month of data, but almost all of the Bitcoin ETH movement has happened on US hours, and alts which have underperformed significantly in US and European hours are really outperforming in Asia, which I think is very interesting. So in Asia, hours right now, alts are ripping. And Bitcoin and ETH is not, but Bitcoin and ETH is doing well in the US and Europe. Take with that what you will. That's only a month of data. But I'm curious as to where you kind of see the biggest opportunity for crypto, where you see interest spread geographically, and where Kraken is focused, it has operations.
Yeah, so I think when you look at various reports in terms of crypto adoption by state, by nation, you see that the top 10 are, a lot of them are developing countries, right? You see a lot of adoption in Turkey. You see a lot of adoption now in Lebanon. You see a lot of adoption in places where the motivation to be in crypto is actually survival. Like exit the kind of rampant inflation that is basically, destroying your wealth, and just move into kind of Bitcoin or stable coin type economy. So what this I call this digital migration. So you can't leave Lebanon or you can't leave Turkey for whatever reason, and sometimes it's actually might cost you your life. So instead of that, you just download the wallet and you start to participate in this new economy. So I think you see a lot of developing countries in Asia, in Africa. The percentage of people who are using crypto in those countries are sometimes outpace what we see in Europe and the US. And that has been driven by an understanding that this is basically a way to protect their wealth, and they're kind of leaping forward into the future. I remember that, I'm not sure about exactly the numbers, but in Rwanda, there was a survey done where people at certain year, when they surveyed them, like 90% never had a phone call. They never pick up a phone and called someone, but then they leaped into mobile. So they just skipped the entirety's kind of years of the 50s, 60s, 70s, where people had phones, landlines in their homes, and just introduced themselves into mobile, and just had better reception in Rwanda and better infrastructure for mobile, even sometimes better than the Bay Area, right? So it is. I think it is happening in crypto too. There's some economies in this world that are just leaping forward from a really corrupt and just inefficient financial services system into crypto. So that is one thing that I definitely see kind of out there, and Kraken wants to accelerate the adoption of cryptocurrencies worldwide. So wherever this is happening, we're trying to play a role and be part of this movement. And then you have the more established kind of developed countries, Europe, US, where the motivation is really diversification, wealth building. These people are not subject to, well, in the US now it's debatable, to hyperinflation, but they have like a different motivation. And I think in this case, I think it will be really built on just trust, right? That companies are regulated, that this is a trustworthy institution. These are trustworthy institutions, and the rules are clear. And once I think that is happening, then you're going to see more adoption. But I will add, again, going back to NFTs, which Kraken launched an NFT marketplace that I think we have a chance of onboarding the next billion people through affinity. So basically, because they want to be part of a sport team, a celebrity, something that represent ownership in a brand that they love. This wasn't part of crypto in 2017 and 2019, but now it is. And I think we're going to see, even though the market collapsed and right now we're in a bear market, I think we're going to see a lot more coming from ownership of brands and ownership of sports teams and ownership of celebrities and ownership of kind of other things that people really care about. And this is why they're going to onboard themselves into crypto, especially in the developed world.
And so I guess that kind of leads well into my next question, which is, what do you think are kind of the main use cases of crypto? Because one of the things that you've alluded to throughout this conversation is this idea of crypto as a hedge asset, especially, a hedge against, countries that have hyperinflation, right? It's a way to access a currency that, funnily enough, is less volatile, than their own native currency. But you've also alluded to NFTs as a major use case. And so, where do you kind of see the opportunity? Because we haven't really talked about DeFi, for example. We haven't talked about some of the other topics that are hot, among others. And look, not everything is going to work, and not everything's going to get us to mainstream adoption. So, what do you think the things that will are?
So we can talk about DeFi because I think this is a great use case, right? I mean, there's one initiative I saw of a smart contract that is a form of insurance. So what they do is you can contribute, tokens to the smart contract, and then there's an oracle that kind of reads from, I think, like the UN or something, in terms of where there are floods. And if you are a farmer in Africa and no insurance companies could care about you because the premium you pay is very, very low, so it's not profitable for them to operate their entire business there. But now you can onboard yourselves to crypto, buy some tokens, contribute to the smart contract. There's an oracle that reads the kind of weather information, and if there's a flood in the area of where you are, and they can geofence you, you're gonna get a claim automatically paid to you, and you'll be able to survive flooding. That is an amazing use case.
That's really cool. I haven't heard that.
So I think that represents an opportunity for the industry to demonstrate why this matters. And it matters not just for farmers in Africa. It can matter when it comes to earthquakes. It can matter to so as long as we're building kind of all these kind of oracles and all these ways and an easier way to kind of unwrap yourself to crypto. And then we build, there's a ton now being invested in infrastructure, but once there's going to be that UI UX layer being built so that people can have an easy time understanding, okay, I'm clicking here, this is where my tokens are, and now I'm going to, now I'm insured against this, that, or the other, or now I have some sort of a retirement savings account in crypto. This is where we're going to see a ton of adoption. But to your question, this is one cool use case. Another use case is just NFTs, right? So I know about artists that decided to let's try to do this kind of digital art, and they live in some remote place somewhere in the world, and suddenly they have exposure to global markets, right? They can showcase what they do, and some people like it, and suddenly they buy it, and then they can enjoy from secondary sales kind of royalties rolling into them, something that artists never had. Because they were selling their art into galleries, and the gallery was then promoting the artist, but the artist would never earn money from secondary sales. I think that's an amazing use case. And then there's remittance and everything else that people have been talking about in terms of transacting cross border. It's really kind of across the board, and I think. But I think that the industry needs to do a better job in explaining these and why these matters to not just speculators, but why crypto matters to everyone.
And so, you're on the Fundamental Value podcast. So one question that we ask all of our guests is around fundamentals for crypto. So how do you define or think about, fundamentals for a token?
So I think you taught me well that there are no fundamentals for crypto. The thing that the only real fundamental for crypto is sentiment. That is the best way to kind of, because there are no financial reports and no kind of quarterly reports. You can't borrow anything from TradFi into crypto. So I learned from you that probably sentiment is the best way to have or to view as some sort of a fundamental, but then also you baked into it a lot of other things that allows maybe to have some additional kind of insights into a token, so significant events, right? any team changes, any joint ventures, any funding, any upgrades, forks, things of that nature. I mean, these are the, I think, quote unquote fundamentals for tokens. And if you're an analyst sitting on top of this and trying to kind of use the trove of data that is now available for crypto, then maybe there's now a way through companies like the TIE to develop a discipline, an entire discipline of analyzing tokens in a completely different way than how you analyze stocks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the market has certainly evolved over the years, right? I think in a funny way, if we actually make crypto securities, we can create more fundamentals by allowing value to better accrue to token holders than does today. For example, Uniswap, right? Tokens are only accruing, Uniswap's a $4 billion asset, but you don't get any value accrued to you as a holder of Uniswap. If you're providing, liquidity to Uniswap, you can get paid fees, right? So I think that's a fair and valid point. And so, what do you think? Obviously we've spoke a lot about NFTs, which have been around for a while. We've spoke about Bitcoin and ETH. You've started to allude to, what I like to call security tokens, but people tried to rebrand as RWAs, which to me are still security tokens. But what do you think are like the most exciting new and emerging areas in crypto that you see?
I think there are a number of things, right? One is one is the basically the ability to start earning kind of yield, or start earning like rewards on assets that are fairly stable, right? Because people are scared when they are kind of staking assets, because they're exposed to the volatility of the assets, the underlying asset. But now I think there's an emerging kind of set of new offerings and things of that nature where you have some sort of a return of an asset that's fairly stable. And I think that would make and that return is obviously higher than let's say a US dollar offering. So I think that would make a lot of institutions kind of really think if they're serving their customers well by not developing capabilities to allocate to these tokens and to this into crypto. I think that asset managers, I mean, their customers are pretty sophisticated, so they will come to them and say, look, this is I read this, I read the other, this is not that risk, this is not that high of a risk, why aren't you allocating to this, why aren't you doing that? And so I think that would drive more institutional adoption when they can see they can get some sort of a return on maybe on BTC, maybe on definitely on ETH, but not just. So I think that's definitely exciting to me, because it means just more institutional adoption happening faster, because everyone are chasing alpha, and if the beta is like manageable, then like why not, right? It kind of weakens the pushback. So that's one exciting, I think, thing that is happening. The other is, I mean, I still don't know how to treat like ordinals. I still don't know how to treat like NFTs on BTC, but I think there's something there. I need to really kind of dig deeper, but if Bitcoin will be an infrastructure or protocol where innovation like NFT can happen, meaning ordinals, but then that can unlock a lot of opportunities. That can unlock a lot of like interesting new plays and interesting new companies being built on top of that, and providing some sort of a service that can drive more crypto adoption.
So we actually met for the first time 5 years ago, basically almost 5 years ago today at this point, I think. And so, a lot has changed in crypto over those last 5 years. And I think it would have been hard to kind of guess exactly where we would be today. But when you fast forward and you think about the next 5 years for crypto, where do you think we'll be, and where do you think Kraken will be? Kind of how do you envision Kraken 5 years from now?
So I think I want to put like a positive spin on things, because I think there's a lot of obviously negativity right now, negative sentiment, especially in the US. But I want to stay positive. I want to say that in Europe, we see kind of MiCA coming, which will be a regulatory framework that would allow for crypto to operate in a very kind of operating under very clear rules of the road. And we're going to see exchanges, and we're going to see other entities kind of operating under MiCA and providing people with the opportunity to onboard to crypto. So I'm very kind of bullish on that. In the US, I think that yes, the industry is facing definitely uphill battles right now. But I'm bullish. I think you now at the House, for the first time, you have a digital asset subcommittee, and there's like an entire subcommittee dedicated to our industry. So I think that's a start, but I see that kind of only growing. And so in 5 years, I think where we're going to see the industry is we're going to see the industry being much, much bigger. I think you're going to see a lot of financial institutions be in crypto if there aren't already. And I see Kraken as a much bigger company providing swath of services that are extending beyond trading and investing and into kind of wealth management and into some other areas that we're exploring, and really providing people with an opportunity to kind of build their wealth while still advancing the cause of freedom worldwide.
And so my final question is, what is your most controversial take in crypto right now?
Maybe that I think banks can be the kind of the catalyst for a change. A lot of people are saying that at the end of the day, with some degree of truth, that Bitcoin represents essentially a clash between centralized, surveilled industry and basically a decentralized, free kind of society, right? But I think maybe there is a path where banks are actually not adversarial to the cause of crypto, but they are finding a way to actually wanting to promote this, maybe in the form of instead of offering like savings accounts, right, or credit lines that are based on fiat, they're now going to have a banking license, but all of their operations will be on the blockchain. And so when you open an account at this bank, you will receive, or you will be offered, yield services. You will be provided with all sorts of credit facilities and things of that nature, and all based on blockchain with a banking license. And that may accelerate the adoption of crypto. So instead of them being kind of adversarial, I mean, some of them will be, but maybe that is where we're going to see some really kind of interesting moves if a bunch of kind of crypto investors would own banks and would start kind of taking the banking industry in that direction. That can really be like a catalyst for a change.
And so where can listeners find out more about you and Kraken, and where can they follow you? And we'll make sure to put the links below as well.
So, just go to, kraken.com or download the Kraken app. And we'll be happy to have you as our customers. And in terms of myself, just Google Guy Hirsch, and Twitter, LinkedIn, kind of easier. It's easy to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Guy. This was great. Loved having you on, and we'll definitely have to do this again in retrospect in a year from now or two.
Would love to.